Good evening to all the participants. I welcome you on behalf of Madras Tax Bar. Today we have Ms. Charulata Rajaji, who is going to take a very interesting topic again, which is on transactional credit, the issue of time limit. So today our session will be a little shorter than usual because we have another session at 5 o'clock in another platform. So the first, the presentation will be taken by Charulata, and at the end of the session, we will have the question answer round. I request all the participants to kindly restrict their questions to one, so that we can cover up as many questions as possible, and then so that we can move on to the next session at 5 p.m. also. So thank you once again for all joining us today. Charu, over to you, and all the best.
Just sharing the screen. Good evening to everyone. First of all, thanks to the MTB organizers for giving me this opportunity to present on this topic. To jump into the topic straight away, probably the issue of transitioning GST credit is the most litigated one right from the inception of GST. And I'm going to try and move over this topic in 4 nutshells. Just give me a minute. The screen is stuck. Let me just try resharing the screen again.
Yes.
Is it visible?
Yes, Charu.
As I said, I'm going to try and capture this entire issue of transitioning GST credit in 4 broad headings. First, we all are aware of the provisions and law relating to this issue, but to give a first-hand view of this, I'm going to discuss the background, the provisions, and the issues and the facts which are involved. Next, we'll take a look at the important High Court judgments. Probably we'll have brand equity judgment of the Delhi High Court as the base, and we'll also discuss the other surrounding important judgments in favor of the assessee, and also the NELCO judgment of Bombay High Court in favor of the revenue. Then we'll see the 2020 Finance Act amendment and its impact on the judgments. So this would be the broad overview of the presentation. Now let's jump into the background of this issue. We all know until June 2017, we had separate laws governing excise, service tax, VAT, etc. And GST came into force, subsuming all these laws. And all the taxpayers had a credit which was accumulated, validly availed and accumulated, which was lying in their balance until June 2017. And since this tax is only being subsumed, government naturally and also categorically stated that they also want to give this benefit of transitioning the credit which is available under the erstwhile regime into the GST regime as well. This provision is contained under section 140. There are various subsections, but for this presentation, we will confine to section 141. 141 basically provides that whatever credit is lying in as on the June 2017 return under the erstwhile law, that can be transitioned into the GST in the manner prescribed. What is in the manner prescribed? That will take us directly to Rule 117. Rule 117 subclause 1, which specifically says it has to be filed in Tran 1, and it also gave a time stipulation by saying it has to be filed within a period of 90 days from the effective date, that is 1/7/2017, and it also provided for subsequent extensions with a leeway of another 90 days. As usual, when a new regime comes into place, it also comes with a share of the troubles and the trials and tribulations. Even here, the assessees, when they started filing be it the normal 3B returns or the normal monthly returns, they experienced difficulties, and transitional return was not any different. Therefore, subsequently, the commissioner exercised these powers under Rule 117, and the last date for compiling, falling under this and availing this transitional credit was extended from time to time, and at the end, this last date, as per 90 plus 90 days, fell on 27th December 2017. Now, this was the situation. It's not like on 27th December 2017, the assessees got the benefit and they were able to file it without any trouble as such. There was a plethora of litigations across India which were filed across all the high courts asking for a mandamus to allow them to file the returns. This is on account of, let's say, the internet problem, or probably the portal which gave so many error messages, pop-ups, and also other issues like the law itself being in the nascent stage. Many assessees, probably the low rung of assessees, were not aware of this provision either. Keeping in view this, government in its wisdom, they also legislated a provision which is 117(1)(a), which was to take care of situations where there are technical difficulties in the common portal alone. So let's say what is the scope of these technical difficulties was not defined in the Act, so that was left out, which was subsequently clarified by the GST Council in various meetings. We will have a look at what is the scope of this when we have a look at the decisions along with. Now moving into the factual scenarios. So as I said, there was all the assessees faced problem in this account. They couldn't file the Tran 1. They couldn't take the credit even though they were validly aware and they have taken it in the erstwhile regime. They couldn't transition into the GST. This was the position. 117(1)(a) gave relief to people who attempted to file and the portal had a log of such attempt. Therefore, that situation was taken care of. So one category of assessees, they got a relief. So what are the other categories of assessees who, even after this amendment, couldn't seek this benefit of transition? Those would be, first, people who didn't file at all, who didn't attempt to file before this due date of 27th December. Second, people who attempted to file within the due date, but the system log, that is what is expected, that the portal should have a record of you trying to log into the system and an error being popped out. If you that record, these assessees didn't have. So these people form the second category. And third, people who filed it within the due date, but probably on account of some clerical errors or some inadvertent mistakes, they didn't take the correct transitional credit within the due date. So these people sought for rectification after the due date, but filed the original return before the due date. So these are the three categories of people who were mirrored in a plethora of litigation. With this background, we are going to look at how the high courts have basically dealt with this issue. As I said, all the high courts inevitably have interfered and have given relief at various points of time in this issue. But for the sake of brevity, I'm going to discuss brand equity. Brand equity judgment, if you see all the three categories of assessees which we just discussed before, people who didn't have the relief even after the amendment, they were involved in this patch, that is the non-filers, people who attempted but didn't have record, and people who filed but didn't rectify. All three categories of assessees were involved. And in this court, in this decision, the court laid down many important propositions. First one, it says the time limit which is prescribed under 117(1) is only directory and not mandatory in nature. Now, if we look into the reasoning for arriving at this finding, the court meticulously, it sees what has been the history of this provision. It says first it was 90, then further period of 90-day leeway was given, but that exercise by commissioner was done from time to time. Then it ended on 27th December. Even after this expiry, you introduced 117(1)(a). There, even though you created an arbitrary category saying technical difficulties on common portal, there also you have exercised the power to increase the time limit. So going by this act of the legislature and executive, the court said this time limit has to be understood as only being directory in nature or not mandatory. It is, we probably should pertinently note this point, because here there was no discussion on whether there was power under the rules or power under 140 section to introduce time limit under 117. The court merely said it is directory based on the scheme of the act and the intention of the legislature. So the second one, it says not just that the transitional credit having validly availed under the earlier law, accumulated also is a vested right which should be available to the assessee. When there is no provision under the act itself which says that you are not eligible, or which says that you are not eligible unless you transition within a set date, it said it is also a constitutional right, it is also a property under Article 300A. Further, it said, yes, there is no time limit under the Act, but I cannot allow you to take this credit in perpetuity. So what is to be done? It devised a mechanism. It said, in absence of a time limit under the Act, the residuary provisions of the Limitation Act will apply. That is the 3 year, serial number 127, it says 3 years. So it says, up to 30/6/2020, assessees should necessarily be given the option to file the transaction. This is the background. With this, it also discussed the previous decisions of Delhi High Court. There has been a plethora of decisions where they talk about how GST is in the trial and error phase, how not just the assessees, even the government has not been able to provide the system as it wanted to give it. Therefore, it said, when the problem exists on one side, both sides, you can't just restrict and play a very strict interpretation when it comes to transitioning this credit. So this is in respect to 117.1. Brand equity also gave a very interesting and detailed discussion on the scope of 117.1A. There, the department tried to argue, as I said before, the technical difficulties on the common portal is only those where a record is available in the portal side of the log, saying that there is an attempt. Unless that is being given, all the representations were being rejected. This, the court said, is very arbitrary. This class, culling out a class of only people for whom a record is available in the portal is arbitrary. It's also discriminatory and unreasonable. It said, not just this, it expanded the scope of this technical difficulties as understood, as against what was understood by the government. It said it should include within its purview any technical difficulties, which will also include low bandwidth issues, lack of computer knowledge, and other issues also. As we all know, this judgment is now being appealed before the Supreme Court, and also a stay of operation of the order has been given. But an interesting fact we should note is this matter has been tagged along with Vertu Energy. If we remember, Vertu Energy is also a decision of the Delhi High Court, where the Delhi High Court allowed the assessee's claim and asked them to file the Tran 1 within September 2019. Against that, the department filed an appeal before Supreme Court, for which no stay was given. So this matter has been tagged along with Vertu Energy. Moving on. Now, the other two important decisions, in my opinion, which led to this amendment probably, is Siddhartha Enterprises and Expert Technologies. I'm not going to deal with every finding of Siddhartha Enterprises because almost every other finding is also borrowed from brand equity, but only two distinctions I would like to point out. Like brand equity, it also held that the time limit prescribed in 117.1 is directory, but the reasoning behind this was little different. In brand equity, they went by the scheme and intention of the legislature to say it's directory. Whereas in Siddhartha Enterprises, they went by the propositions in Acer, Baroda Canyon, etc., which says that when there is no provision which allows the rulemaking authority to prescribe time limit, that cannot be done through a delegated legislation. So they went by that reasoning to say this time limit prescribed under 117 is only directory. Also, along with that, Siddhartha Enterprises also applied the doctrine of legitimate expectation. They said when these taxes are being subsumed, the liability is going to be on the same goods or services, and why not give the credit? When in fact this is only a regime of avoiding cascading of taxes, the transitional credit should be given. The Siddhartha Enterprises was followed subsequently in Oxford Technologies in full, and this decision of the Punjab and Haryana High Court was appealed before the Supreme Court, and SLP was dismissed. So to give it chronological order, Siddhartha came. Siddhartha was subsequently followed in Oxford. After Oxford, brand equity was decided by the Delhi High Court. Now we will have to turn around and look at a decision which is in favor of the revenue. So what is the category of assessee who was before Bombay High Court in NELCO? It was an assessee who attempted to file the Tran 1, but he didn't have the record of attempt in the portal log. So that is the category of assessee who was before NELCO, that is Bombay High Court. In this case, the court said, again the challenge was similar, but in this case the court said, leave out what is prescribed under section 140. 164(2) enables the rule-making authority to prescribe time limit. That is enough to validate this provision. And the credit itself is a concession which is given by the statute. It cannot be claimed as a vested right. They also differentiated K. Abraham by saying that under the CST Act, there was a provision which said no rule can be made against the provisions of the Act, notwithstanding, which is not contrary to the provisions of the Act. I don't see any similar provisions under GST, therefore it is not applicable. Whether that is right or wrong, we'll have to see, because obviously it will be disputed before the Supreme Court. And the next proposition that it laid down is, it said, with regard to 117(1)(a), the technical difficulties definition. It said, technical difficulties has been understood by the IT Grievance Redressal Committee as to only mean those where there is record, and it said there is no arbitrariness or there is no unreasonableness in this classification. The time limit under 117(1) is very sacrosanct, and also that is traceable to 164(2), so that is taken care of. This addition under 117(1)(a) is only in respect of a very particular category of people for whom the relief has been provided. You can expand the scope is what Bombay High Court held in this. Now we have seen the judgments. NELCO came in March. This Finance Act, which introduced certain amendments, this was also Gazette notified in the month of March. The brand equity judgment came in the first week of May. And this amendment, which was passed in March 2020, was notified only on 18th May 2020. Therefore, the timeline would be Siddhartha, Oxford, NELCO, brand equity, and the amendment. So what does this amendment say? This amendment says the ability or the rule-making authority's power, which was earlier there, which was confined only to the prescribed manner, it added a term within such time. This was carried out in all the subsections, as we are only discussing about the main provision, which is 141. There also this within such time was introduced. Basically, by notifying this amendment, what has happened is the rule-making authority's power to prescribe the time limit has been given a statutory blessing. And also, if we look at and ask ourselves the question, what is the object of this amendment? What does it seek to achieve? In my mind, probably this was passed to overcome the decisions of the Siddhartha Enterprises and Oxford, where they said, unless the section provides for the rule-making authority to prescribe time, it cannot be done. Probably having that in mind, this amendment was passed in first place. And as I said before, we have to note this, in this amendment, it is not that 140 itself prescribes the time limit. It only confers the rule-making power to the central government to prescribe time limits for transitioning the credit. This is a very important distinction that we should bear in mind. So now we have seen the judgments in favor of the SSC, the main judgment which is in favor of the revenue. We have seen the amendment. What will be the implication of this amendment on these judgments? So now the law has been notified. So that is the law as on today. Applying the law as on today, we'll have to see the ratios of these judgments. For this purpose, what I have done is, instead of seeing it case-wise, I have applied it ratio-wise. If you see the first point, the ratio in Siddharth Enterprises and Oxford Technologies, that it is a property under Article 300A, and it cannot be taken without the authority of law. Probably that will not hold the field now, because the Act has been amended. The Act has given the rule-making authority the power to prescribe rules. Probably this ratio will not stand as on today with the law, which is the amended section 140. 2. What happens to the ratio in respect of the finding that the time prescribed under 117(1) is only directory? For this, we'll have to split it into two. The directory ratio in Siddharth Enterprises and Oxford Technologies, because the reasoning was based on the fact that 140 didn't give the rule-making authority the power, probably that stands nullified because of this judgment. But on the other hand, if you see the reasoning which was given by the Delhi High Court, which it didn't see whether the rule-making authority had the power to do it, it didn't apply the doctrine of whether something should be directory or mandatory based on the powers, bias of the power. Rather, it applied on the time-tested principles of this doctrine, that whether there is, what is the intention of the legislature, if there is a non-compliance, is there a consequence which is prescribed under the statute? These are the main attributes which are generally tested to see whether a particular provision is directory or mandatory, which has been applied in brand equity. So in my opinion, this ratio of Delhi High Court is unaffected, and this has also been held, not just my opinion, but the Delhi High Court, and subsequently in the SKH sheet metal case, it has held that this directory ratio is unaffected by this amendment. As I said, the SKH ratio case, Delhi High Court recently decided it, which discussed the effect of this 2020 amendment on brand equity. It gave various findings. This case was also followed subsequently by the Punjab and Haryana High Court in CP Marble case. There, in addition to following brand equity, they also relied on Oxford. They said, Oxford has attained finality. Therefore, we have to give effect to that order. Now, the question that arises is, now what will happen? What is the impact of the amendment on 117(1)(a)? This is also answered to an extent in the SKH judgment. It says 117(1)(a), the scope still remains arbitrary, still remains unreasonable. Therefore, even this part of the ratio of brand equity stands unaffected by the 2020 amendment. At this juncture, probably I should also throw a light about our Madras High Court judgment in Checkpoint Apparel. It was a case where the FCC tried to file and he couldn't file, and there was no evidence which was recorded in the log. But the FCC maintained a series of communications right from 28th December with the officers asking for representation, asking for the credit to be granted. It was rejected by saying there is no evidence. In this case, Madras High Court categorically said, when the circular which was issued in 2018, that is in April 2018, an amendment which was carried out in September 2018, you are asking the SSC to have record or comply with something which happened in the past. Is it possible for someone to comply with a requirement retrospectively. This question was put out and the Madras High Court gave the benefit to the SSE and allowed the credit of transition. Now, coming back to the SKH case. This SKH case, interestingly, the first round of litigation was before the Bombay High Court. The SSE is a person who is registered in Maharashtra. And there was a remand by the High Court asking for the authorities to consider the representation, which was again rejected. The SSE filed the return within the due date, but he couldn't revise or rectify the arithmetical errors that crept up before the due date. So therefore, in this case, the Delhi High Court also reiterated the people who are seeking rectification will not be affected by the 2020 amendment. That is because of the reason even if you assume that the time limit is sacrosanct, they have complied with it when the original return was filed. The rectification which is being sought is only a ministerial act. Therefore, there is no non-compliance or there won't be any implication of this 2020 amendment. So we have seen three categories of people. We have said in respect of 117(1)(a), people who have the evidence, they have taken care of by the provision itself. Two, people who filed and people who filed but who don't have the evidence on the log. We have said 117(1)(a), the technical difficulty scope which was expanded by the Delhi High Court stands unaffected. And we have said in respect of people who have filed and who try to rectify beyond the due date, their scope is also unaffected by the amendment. So what happens to people who didn't file at all, who didn't attempt at all? Probably in respect of those people, the brand equity judgment will no longer be eligible as the law stands today. Now moving on. So now we have discussed what is the impact on the judgments. Now let's say the non-filers want to challenge this. We'll have to look at, is there any ground based on which these non-filers can also take the benefit of transitioning the credit. The questions that crop up at the top of my mind are these. Now a retrospective amendment has been made through the 2020 Finance Act, which is as held in checkpoint apparel. This is asking me to comply with something which has happened in the past. This is not a continuing act. Obviously, if this provision has to be given effect to, it has to be applied retrospectively. But can this be challenged on the basis that this is introducing a substantially new provision? In the sense, now earlier there was no requirement or time limit for me to comply with, and I have done it. Now you are bringing in a law retrospectively, stopping the clock at a particular time, or rather the lacuna which is pointed out by Siddhartha and Adford, can that be cured, or can it be cured at all by bringing in a retrospective amendment? Is the first question that needs to be answered. Second, if I apply this amendment on NELCO judgment, what will be the implication? Because as I said, NELCO judgment said the time limit, the rulemaking authorities' power to introduce the time limit need not flow from 140, it flows from 164(2) itself. So what will be the implication of this amendment? Can they say this is only in abundant caution, 164(2) also, and also 140, or should the ratio and understanding of the NELCO judgment, will the ratio and understanding change because of this judgment? 3, can the carry forward of credits be still challenged as vested right and constitutional right? As I summed up before, if we see carefully, the time limit is not prescribed under the statute now also. As in that scenario, and also in light of the brand equity ratio, that this time limit is only directory in nature. On combined reading of this, can we still say this is a vested right, a law which gave me the right, I have validly availed it, it was there, and I have transitioned into it, And the GST provision nowhere says that you cannot avail beyond a set point. Rather, it doesn't say the consequence of not availing beyond the set point in the act itself. Therefore, can it still be called as a vested right? The same argument will hold good for it being a property under 300A also, because as it was held in brand equity, unless it is taken away by the authority of law, what is given will hold good. The final two questions that probably I could think of is what should be the understanding of this technical difficulties. Probably I will throw it open to the floor. This narrow interpretation of the term, what does the government seek to achieve? I mean, what is the objective? Rather, I'm putting a question to myself as to what would be the apprehension in the minds of the government to say that this benefit should be given to only those class of people for whom there is a log in the system. Because especially considering in respect of credits which are based on returns, which is under the erstwhile laws, I have compared with the provisions of the erstwhile laws and I have reported it there. And there are provisions for assessing those returns which are like, if we say service tax and excise, there is a period of 5 years, and for VAT under Tamil Nadu there is 6 years. So if it is an ineligible credit, it is naturally going to go. And it is not a question of checking the validity of the credit also, because the validity is nowhere under picture under transition. It's only a ministerial act of carrying it from one return to another return. So what is the apprehension for the government to take such a stern stand in saying that I will apply the time limit strictly, and that even in respect of technical difficulties, the scope will be so narrow? Probably I can also think of one example. If you remember in 2016, when this total solution projects was implemented in Tamil Nadu, there was a switchover from one old portal to the new portal. Even though it was under the same VAT law, there were issues where people reported TDS under the earlier returns filed under the old portal, and people didn't get the same because TDS credit was auto-populated under the new system. It was not presented, and it didn't come up in the new portal. So there were issues and the matters were taken up to the High Court, and it was resolved amicably. Even though there is a change between the laws here, isn't it just a ministerial act of consolidating 2 or 3 different returns which are under 2 or 3 different portals under one forum? Isn't it all that 140 seeks to achieve? So what is the apprehension is something probably we don't have a clarity as of today. And the final question that I would like to pose is what will happen to the VAT credits? Excuse me. All that you have seen is this Finance Act 2020 amendments were carried out by the Parliament, and the notification was given effect to by the central government. So what happens in respect of the VAT credits? So far as I am aware, excuse me, at least in Tamil Nadu, to the best of my knowledge, there is no provision, there is no ordinance or law which was passed similar to the Finance Act 2020, and no notification issued either. Therefore, the ratio of brand equity, Siddhartha, and all the line of decisions will still hold good in respect of transitioning the VAT credits. So now with this, I've come to the fag end of the topic. I was given initially a period of 30 minutes plus 10 minutes for question and answers. So I wanted to capture in a nutshell the entire issue and throw the floor open. Probably now would be the better time to say why I name it as ebbs and flows. As we see, this issue, when it came into force, there was the assessees were facing so much dilemma whether there can be complaints or not. Then it was resolved by giving extensions now and then. When the extension was given, assessees felt okay, there is some comfort level. Then on 27th also, They couldn't do it. Then again, there was an ebb. Then the coach came to the rescue. Then again, the amendment came. That was again an ebb which was caused. And again, the judgment has come in a stage, which will also naturally go to the Supreme Court. Probably when this issue has attained the shore of Supreme Court, the Supreme Court will drain out at the flow and the issue is resolved.
Thank you, Charu. I think indeed its ebbs and flows will not stop until the Supreme Court finally comes with a final conclusion. So we will take up the questions quickly. We have 20 minutes, so we can take up questions. Participants, if you have any questions, you can either put it in your chat box or you can raise your hand in the app. Charu, we can stop the screen sharing. Is there any questions or anyone wants to supplement?
Do you have the amendment made to section 140? How the amendment was made? Whether a provision was inserted or do you follow?
The term within such time was inserted before the phrase.
The main section of 140 itself.
Yes, in 141 and other subsections as well.
Section or 140?
141.
141.
It will say, in the manner prescribed, can be transitioned in the manner prescribed, before in the manner prescribed, within such time, and in the manner prescribed was.
So with effect from 1/7/2007.
Yeah, retrospective effect.
Charu, we have a question from Rohan in the chat box.
I'll just see.
Since brand equity has been stayed now, if ultimately the Supreme Court upholds the judgment and SSC could not file revised stand-on by 30/6/2020, that is 3-year limitation, will the ratio of the judgment become infructuous?
This is an interesting question. My answer to this would be the Limitation Act, even if you see, it's not for the effect or the consequence of the judgment. It is only for seeking a cause of action, that is, the right which exists, and you should go and you should ensure that you claim it before the deadline. Now the SSCs, I'm sure they would have filed the representation or the manual return before 36. Therefore, this 36 deadline as per the Limitation Act is taken care of. Now the Supreme Court has only stayed the operation of the judgment, which only means the consequences or giving effect to that judgment has been stayed. So if the Supreme Court decides in favor of the SSC, it will automatically flow that this time limit has been taken care of and the benefit should accrue.
I'll unmute Aditya, sir.
It's a great presentation. Only thing is, see, all the other issues regarding rule making power, whether what is the scope of the term technical difficulties, etc. Maybe the more of a sideshow before the Supreme Court. The main issue, I think, will turn on whether it is a vested right, that law on that point, on whether it's a vested right or no, the Article 300A right, etc., etc. Now, in that context, just tell me one thing. Suppose GST had not come, and today there was there was SENVAT rules, and under the SENVAT rules there was an amendment saying that you have to utilize your credit within 6 months, otherwise it will lapse. You either have to utilize or claim a refund. Otherwise, it will lapse to the government. Suppose there's a rule. Would it be valid or no? If it is valid,
about the test credit, sir?
Yeah, assisted a similar rule regarding utilization, because the VAT Act always had a provision with respect to zero-rated sales for time limit for utilization. If suppose SENVAT rules also had, you're saying that there was a rule which was upheld.
Correct. Now, what I'm saying is that the distinction that I would like to point out is even the VAT Act or the central excise regime for that matter,
Yes.
when they want to lapse a credit, when
Yes.
they don't want a utilization to happen,
Yes.
there's a specific provision which
Yes.
says that either you cannot utilize and that what is remaining in your balance will lapse.
Now,
Does not-
I agree with you. There were provisions. Now, apply. But then, what is wrong with the GST Act having a similar provision? Is what I'm asking.
There isn't, right? Because
Well,
140, even if you see
Rule 117 shouldn't it be read like that? Isn't it a lapsing provision?
sir, as I see, there are two sides to this coin. One is what should I do to enable, that is enabling provision, what should I do to get it? Two, what is the consequence? If I don't do something, what will happen? If you see VAT Act, it will say you take the credit, that is the enabling provision. Two, on the other side, it will say what happens if you don't do something, it will lapse. That is absent in GST. And that this is the basis on which brand equity also says this is only directory. There is no consequences. What happens if I don't comply? What is the sacrosanct nature of this?
I agree, ma. I agree. That I think is a distinction.
Yeah. In fact, I wanted to add to Aditya's question here. Like, can we imply a lapsing in Rule 117? See,
Sir,
because
please complete, sir.
no, if you see the credit was given by a rule making authority only. The erstwhile credit was given by a rule making authority, and that credit is converted by a legislature, a provision of a statute. Can the lapsing flow from another rule making authority? And can that lapsing be an implied lapsing? Like, can we imply 117 is actually a lapsing provision? Can we do?
So as I understand, sir, you are asking me, can the enabling provision be contained in the statute itself? And can the lapsing be contained in the delegated legislation? But the power to lapse is given by the statute. And the delegated legislation doesn't have an express provision. It only has can there be an implied lapse? Is this your question?
So two parts to my question. Number one is this credit was originally given by a rule making authority. 140 confirms the credit, but can 117 be seen as a provision which is taking away? Number one. Number two, can we imply from 117 that it is a provision for credit lapse? Can lapse be an implied provision?
Okay. So to answer the first question, sir. Yes, in fact, the VAT was given under the statute, but the excise credit, service tax, everything flowed from SENVAT. But when we say it is a vested right, we are talking about the position as on 1/7/2017. As on 1/7/2017, 174 of the GST Act says every right which is accrued under the laws, which includes the acts, the rule making rules, everything, and that is protected by the statute now as an accrued right. So can we say now the enabling provision was under the rule making authority, was given by the rule making authority, and subsequently the lapsing is also by the rule making authority? I don't think that will be an answer. My answer to that would be it is a vested right, not because of something given under the rule. It is because of the provision under the Act. And that being the case, you can't have an inequality where the right is given by the statute and it is taken away by the rule making authority. More so because 140 itself is granting me the right. 170 is only describing the procedure for how to avail what is given in 140. That would be the answer for the first part. And for the second part, to say whether there can be any implied lapse at all, I think Escher is on this point where they tried arguing about this mod VAT credit rules when they said the Supreme Court in fact struck down that rule by saying there is no rule making, there is no power for the rule making authority for such lapse. There, in fact, they discussed this point, and if I remember right, it has been held that when something is given by the statute, it has to be expressly taken away by the statute also.
Thanks, Charu. Vishwanathan sir wants to add something? We'll quickly take up a couple of more questions and then we can close the session.
No, I don't have a question. I just want to say what Aditya has asked. Even under the Senvat credit rules or the earlier Modvat credit rules, there was no lapsing provision. Government has no right to lapse the credit. Supposing you are following SSA exemption and you want to forego that exemption, you want to change the right of your availing that exemption or something like that, then only the law said in such a change of situation, the credit in your balance shall lapse. So there is a distinguishing factor. Lapse question doesn't arise because it's a vested right, as you are rightly said. Each tractor, they are very clearly put, there is no power to lapse. Now, as you rightly said also to Mr. Raghavan's case, what happens is now 174 grants the right to take credit. I have not yet taken the credit. Where is the question of lapse? You have to first allow it. Then only the question of lapse. You can't take away my right because 141 says shall be entitled to the credit. It's a vested right under the Act also. So they cannot say 117 is a lapsing provision and therefore will not give you the credit at all. That cannot be said at all. That is, it defeats all canons of law. That cannot be done at all. So very good presentation, Charu. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, Vishwanathan sir. Charu, there's one question from Gokarnation sir in the chat box. I'll read it for you.
Okay.
So his question is, can we say that the credit is not lapsed in Senvat credit rules as on 1/7/2017? Further, if transitional credit is not allowed under GST, then can we claim refund under erstwhile Senvat credit rules?
To answer the first question, sir, of course it is not lapsed. That is the reason we are showing it in the June return of the erstwhile laws. And that is only being carried forward into 140. Therefore, there is no question of lapsing that credit. To answer your second question, sir, in respect of VAT, of course, there was a provision where it said credit which is carried beyond 2 years that can be claimed as refund. But unless in specific scenarios under the Senvat regime, there was no provision for claiming refund of the balance credit. But if you see section 142 of the GST, it says that refund can be claimed under the erstwhile laws if it cannot be carried forward. But we'll have to say, because it says refund which is eligible under the erstwhile law, again we'll have to apply and see if the refund was in first place eligible under the erstwhile law. So there seems to be a difficulty there. Therefore, transitioning the credit would be a better alternative is what I see.
I hope the question is answered, Gokarnation sir. So anyways, now we've almost taken up all the queries, Charu, and
Thank you.
the time is also, because there's another session at 5 o'clock. So I once again thank all the participants for joining us early today. I think Vishwaran sir wants to just sum up something.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Charu, I just want to say one thing. You have done well. The loss to the government is nothing, according to you. In fact, there's a gain to the department by not using that credit for the last 2.5 years. I paid through cash. I have lost interest.
Again, that Bharti Airtel decision is there. We have to see whether we can apply. If at all we win this battle, whether can we take benefit of that judgment, we'll have to see.
But no loss to the department at all. In fact, 139, if you see, they are very conveniently saying migrating the registration. Why not migrate the credit also? It is their responsibility. It is government which should have migrated my credit also. You are introducing system. 141 doesn't talk about any taking in electronic mode. It only said you shall be entitled to take the credit. How do I take credit? Whether the knowledge of the SSE is enough to take the credit, there should be a very, what I would say, government to allow this credit. Nothing is lost to them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You said probably a holistic approach is required.
Okay, go ahead, Chopra.
Yes, sir. So thank you once again all for joining us, and thank you, Charu, for this wonderful session. I mean, you took it in a very smooth flow, and and then a lot of doubts with regard to the transitional credit. It keeps coming up with every new judgment. So yes, we let us wait and watch what Supreme Court does to it, and then
Probably
you
the issues are
have
drained out.
another. Sure.
Thank you.
So
Thanks to everyone for giving me this opportunity again. And thanks to everyone for listening to me. Thank you.
sure. Thank you. And once again, AK Kailasam and Associates is conducting a session with Justice Vineet Kothari at 5 o'clock. You can catch it on YouTube live if you're not registered for the meeting. So thank you once again all for joining us. Tomorrow we will be back with our regular timings at 5 p.m. The details of the session will be shared later. Thank you, and congratulations, Charu, on your promotion today.
Thanks, Prithvi.
Thank you. I'm ending the session.